Hello and welcome to Transmission. Tonight I am joined by Fury. Welcome and thank you for coming along.
Thank you for having me.
So we were having a bit of a discussion earlier and you were talking about the fact that you identify as gender non-binary.
Yep.
Can you give us a bit of an explanation of what that is for those that wouldn't know?
Yeah, well, for me it's always been a kind of a factor in my life. The first time that I really experienced feeling neither like a guy or a girl, I was really young. I was at a ski lodge actually, and I looked in the mirror and I couldn't tell if I was a boy or a girl, and that really freaked me out. And then I sort of got really calm and was like, no, it's fine, that's internal, nobody else can see it. And I walked out the door and the first thing a kid asked me was, are you a boy or a girl? And I remember feeling really found out. And I sort of said, girl. And after that, I just sort of made every effort to be really sort of feminine and, grow my hair long and just adhere to all these norms because I didn't want that feeling of being found out again. So it started, like, for me, it's always been around, whether or not I've sort of listened to it or sort of adhered to how I felt comfortable was a different matter. Yeah.
So it's sort of that sense of being neither sort of a guy or a girl.
Yeah, totally. Or just like not really knowing where I fit, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that, like, for me, for how I understand people who identify queer gendered, they like identify as that space in between, and I just identify non-binary because I don't know where I go. Yeah.
And so, like you said, so you were sort of hyper feminine for a while and did all that sort of stuff.
Ooh, yeah.
So when did you stop doing that? And
well, it's interesting, because I sort of just like played the part of being a really hyper feminine, cis, straightish girl. Like I always identified as like kind of pansexual. But when I came to Melbourne and I broke up with my partner at the time, I just went through this, like, I call it my restructuring of self.
Yep.
That's a very polite way of putting it. I was a mess for a very long time.
Yeah.
And and then I just realized that I needed to focus more on doing stuff that made me happy, and part of that was like seeing not only cis guys and started seeing cis women as well. And I met some amazing queers, and my best friend Precious actually was the one who really like challenged me.
Yeah.
They were so patient because I said and did like a lot of really gender essentialist stuff. And so they sort of like walked me through it.
Yep.
Maybe that's not quite right. Have you thought about this? And that's when I sort of realized, like, oh my God, there are other options. Like, I don't have to be one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, with that, so, I mean, most commonly people would use pronouns sort of like he or she. So what pronouns do you like to use?
I've settled with they at the moment. It's all a little bit up in the air. I don't know. But that's okay. They's comfortable at the moment.
Yeah.
And so that's what I use. Yeah.
What's your experience been in sort of talking to people, or sort of, I suppose, have you felt the need to sort of come out?
It's funny you should say that, actually, because when I started I work for the Museum of Victoria, and when I started working there, I had been identifying as queer a little bit beforehand, but I just wanted to start a job being queer, and I didn't want to have to explain it down the track. And that's a really hard decision to make because you don't know anyone, you don't know the environment, you don't know what you're dealing with. It's like this massive unknown quantity. But I thought it would be much easier than going, down the track and sort of like coming out once I sort of gauged the scene. So that was like a really interesting process. And like I work with like a lot of blokey blokes and tradie guys, and so some of them didn't get it, some of them still don't, but they've all been really supportive, and like a lot of them have really been trying with the pronouns, and some of them are getting it and all that sort of stuff. So it's really, really good.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's good. It was a little bit terrifying to start with, but yeah, no, it was worth it. And there was this amazing moment where one of the guys that I work with, he said to me recently, he's like, oh, I forgot to tell you, I was on a plane trip from Adelaide to Melbourne. And this person sat down next to me and said, and I sat down and saw that they had a whole lot of paperwork, and I said, what's up with the paperwork? And they said, oh, it's okay, not many people know about this, but I'm going to Melbourne, I'm genderqueer. He's like, oh yeah, no, yeah, cool, I work with someone. And so they had this massive conversation about being genderqueer and like working at the museum and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And he did not get what it meant to them and to me.
Yeah.
But apparently they just went like, I feel so much like I'm making the right choice now, because they were going to Melbourne to get consults about transitioning.
Oh, wow.
And then he told me, and I was like tearing up, and he was like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But it's just this amazing feeling knowing that being out and being just like yourself can influence, you know, other people in the community vicariously through circumstance. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. That sort of just kind of paying it forward almost, like just by being yourself.
Yeah, yeah, like it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, you also mentioned that you do some spoken word poetry.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing that for?
Look, I've been writing poetry since day dot. It's not always been good. But the spoken word stuff has been about 2 years now. Mm-hmm. I think this month it's 2 years since my first spoken poetry gig. But yeah, I've been doing it seriously sort of for the past year or so. Yeah.
And so what sort of stuff do you like to write about? Do you talk about sort of your identity within your poetry, or is it other stuff?
I have basically been doing that more since I've been comfortable with, I guess, talking about it. So yes, it's been coming out in some poems. Mm-hmm. A lot of what I write about is like relationships and people and stuff. So there are a few poems about like lovers and partners, and several poems about my mum and my relationship with my mum. Mm-hmm. And yeah, but there is one which was my friend. I sent it to them, and they said, "Oh, I hate it because it's so good." And it just talks about being like really uncomfortable and someone sort of being like physically awkward and gendering you awkwardly and telling you what your body is. Yeah. Yeah. So
is that sort of like a compliment that
I think because it means like the poem hit the mark, right? It was really relatable, and they were like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I hate that. Yeah. And yes, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So yeah, it was definitely a compliment.
And do you think that it's been a bit easier in terms of since you've been sort of more out and a bit more comfortable, has it been easier to sort of do that in terms of when you're writing poems and things like that, to sort of be a bit more true to how you're feeling? Yeah,
I think that, I mean, yes and no. It's almost like when I came out, it's difficult and it can be really raw sometimes, especially when I write like about, you know, my relationship with my mom or anything like that. So it's almost like the poems become, the more personal they get, the more difficult it is to write them, because you want to write it well and you want to write it fairly. Yeah. But you also want to like touch on the like how you feel and like really draw on your vulnerabilities, basically. Yeah. It's kind of like just, you know, exposing yourself to on the stage, and it's can be really, really difficult. Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, I think we could talk about this forever, but thank you for just giving us a little bit of a insight into you and a little bit about sort of what your gender identity is.
Yeah, cool.
Being quite cool. So a big thank you to Fury for joining us. You've been watching Transmission.